Previously on Ask a Matchmaker.
So you went undercover on a dating app.
I spent 2024 undercover on a conservative dating app, going on dates with far-right men to basically understand what creates that belief system.
As a professional matchmaker in New York,
Yes.
you know, some of my clients are Republican. What does it mean to be conservative in 2024, 2025?
I mean, it's a spectrum. Like, what does it mean to be liberal in 2024? Like, you can go from kind of like moderate to far left. It's like moderate to far right. And conservative in this dating sense, what I saw on these apps, it was a lot of Christian nationalism. And because it was a political app, like I saw...
Which app was this?
I don't want to say.
Okay.
I don't want to disclose like any identities of the men. I don't want to advertise a dating app that doesn't take down profiles of men who have like swastika tattoos. I just don't want more people going.
So you saw stuff like that too?
Yes. And to be clear, I was looking at the extreme examples, so I would not say this represents like anyone who identifies as Republican. I think in general, if someone were to just outwardly say like, I'm a neo-Nazi, you would reject them because that's violent.
Well,
and
there's
that's
also
hateful.
a social consequence.
Yes, and that's why they don't disclose their political beliefs to their friends. They don't want to lose their friends, so they hide how they feel. Their political beliefs are a way for them. They hate themselves, is what I felt. I felt extreme, almost like they felt like trauma victims to me without identifying that way. And I like hesitate to say that because I don't feel bad for them. And they are victimizing themselves is really what I was feeling. They feel like victims.
Ironic.
They feel like victims. They hate themselves. And so it comes out, they project it out. So the more hateful their politics are, that's a reflection of how much they hate themselves. They're not aware enough to understand that. And that's why they're afraid to lose their friends. So then they pretend that they're still liberal so they can keep their friends because they really care about social connection. They don't say how they're really feeling because they don't know. And then they go online and they go to these independent media guys who basically like fake empower how they feel because they're like, it's like a different way to express being a victim is saying, oh, I'm emasculated. You're not emasculated. You feel like a victim of something that has no name because like, and so...
I have so many follow-up questions for you.
Sure. And so then it's basically like the more isolated they are, the more hateful self-hate they feel, the more they hate everybody else, the more they go online to feel like validated and affirmed by these online groups. So really the biggest insight I had was, and I went to a neo-Nazi meeting with one of these guys.
On a first date?
No, not on a first date. But
would have been crazy.
Like he just like brought me because he thought I might be, he shouldn't have brought me.
There are neo-Nazi meetings in Manhattan?
Yeah, it was not in Manhattan, but it was in New York. It was in one of the boroughs.
Wow.
And
we don't know anything. I feel so stupid right now.
They spent this meeting complaining about their wives and girlfriends. So what I realized was you feel like you need to have this extreme, violent point of view to justify having relationship problems. It's like you don't actually need to be a neo-Nazi to bitch about your girlfriend, but they need to feel masculine about talking about even relationships, I think. Like
so they weren't talking about their hate for someone who, you know.
No, I mean maybe they do that at their other meetings, but the one that I was present for was like an hour, and it was like one of the two guys, like one of the first people who started talking was talking about how he was having trouble with his girlfriend who was still working. Like there was some relationship problem, and they all started like comforting him and being like, yeah, I've been through that. And they talked about the obedience and the training.
Jesse's face needs to have its own like camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I could see it. But so it was interesting, obviously, and horrible because they basically were just teaching him how to have an abusive relationship. But
what were they saying to him?
I mean, they talked about like emotional punishment as a way to like punish her for disagreeing with you. Like, for example, she would go out with her friends when he didn't want her to. And then they were like, okay, like they were teaching him like narcissistic abuse cycles. So they would say, okay, if she goes out with her friends and she comes back, don't speak to her. Like, don't speak to her for 3 days.
Literally narcissism, yeah.
Yeah. It's teaching. And but reward her in 3 days. You can start rewarding her if she's done enough, like she's done enough nice things for you. Like, has she been cooking?
Oh man.
And they're describing this conservative, like ideal feminine woman who's submissive to the man's needs.
I'm literally, I don't even know. My brain is broken right now.
They just want to hang out with
I
each
want to
other.
understand.
Yes,
They don't want a wife. They don't want, like, in
Well,
reality.
May I ask a few questions?
Yes.
Because I want to understand like where this comes from. So some of these are yes or no questions, but like, did some of the men that you went out with, did their moms work, or were they stay-at-home moms?
I would say like half and half.
Okay. Did some of these men that you went out with, were they raised in a religion, or is this something that we're picking up as part of the identity?
Mostly like casual religion.
Okay.
So like for example, I think it's that the desire for social connection. Like one of them, I went to church on a date with one guy, and I asked him like, is church a big part of your life? And he said he didn't really consider it a huge part of his life growing up, but his mom died from cancer when he was in high school. And her church friends were the ones who started cooking for him and his dad, like when his mom died. So it was the church community that he knows is taking care of his family when his mom died. So he associates those family values with church. And, you know, churches provide community for people. That's like the best part of being part of like a religious community. Yeah. It's a true community, right. Hopefully.
Yeah. And then my last question here is like, did the men that you went out with, did they have friends outside of this community of the neo-Nazi conservative red pill?
So most of their friends were not parts of these, like in real life, they had liberal friends that they are masking their beliefs around. So they like code switch. They know exactly what to say to sound liberal. Like one of these guys owns a restaurant in the Lower East Side. He's going to be employing all the people that someone super far right should hate, right? So like the two genders only people. You're definitely going to have like non-binary people working in a restaurant in the Lower East Side. Like queer people are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so when I was asking him, you know, do your political beliefs affect how you treat your employees? No, I love my gay employees. So a lot of their beliefs are like, in theory, because on paper, it would, hating groups and hating this way of organizing people would explain why they feel so bad, if that makes sense. It's like they've picked up these political beliefs, like it feels like very recently. Because it only took a few questions for me to be able to start finding cracks in what they think they believe and what they're actually doing in real life. Like they're around all the people they think they hate, and they don't hate those people individually, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What would you say to a woman in New York who is currently listening to this podcast, likely leans liberal, or maybe she's independent, wants to date men who, I don't even know to share necessarily political affiliation, but certainly like the same moral compass? How would she avoid meeting these sort of men, or what kind of questions could she ask in the first 2 dates to make sure that it's not one of these maskers?
I don't even know if that's the right question, because I found that even the guys who I've dated in the past who were politically liberal, they had some of these insecurities. So I think a lot of my exes prepared me, like, and I'm like very grateful for all my relationships, and I aligned with them politically, but they still had these insecurities about like my career, the fact that I'm very purpose driven and they weren't. They maybe had high paying jobs, or maybe they didn't make as much money as they thought. But there's something that's bigger than the politics. And there is, I think, an overall masking and like an identity crisis with young men, because it's the most extreme because liberal white women are the most hated people when you're talking about white supremacist men.
Yeah.
They hate white liberal women the most because we've betrayed this white heteropatriarchy. So we, the rest of society is like, being a white liberal white woman, you're basically a white man, right? Like white feminism sucks and we're basically white men. But white men, they are like, oh, you've betrayed us because you're just pointing the finger at us as the problem. And they're not articulating it that way, but what they feel is, for the centuries that we've all been living with, we've been living with supremacy, and you look at and they're obsessed with like white family units, and what these guys are obsessed with creating like healthy, positive white identity, because now because of woke, being a white man is just bad. And they can't escape that. They don't know how to create any other kind of identity, because if the whole world works for you, you've never had to change how you identify. You've never had to create your own narrative. So they really struggle with having their own, they don't even know how to create their own self-concept. So basically it's like, for centuries, we've been living with supremacy, and now, and recently, we've started creating tools for all these different groups to start creating empowering identities, empowering narratives based on whatever oppressive systems like they've been forced to live with for centuries. And we've basically and white women, we still get something, because we get to say like, well, we still were oppressed and we only just got the right to vote. So we're creating our own identity and we have these new tools to empower ourselves. And now we have bank accounts. Now we get to have jobs. But if you're a white guy, there are no new tools for you. You're stuck in the 50s because we said, you don't need anything. You have everything. You're the most privileged. So we kind of like fucked up in the sense that everyone is way more emotionally advanced out of necessity from trauma, from these oppressive systems. And we basically have, in a sense, left them behind emotionally. Not that it's anyone else's job to like help them grow, but we just have not created, from what I've seen, and I come from like a mental health background, like, and I'm looking at this like, what did I miss? Like, I cover mental health as like a journalist. I've created these tools for young people, and I was really talking to these guys like, what did I miss that I thought I was including everybody? And these guys, their emotions are like, I am so forgotten. I am so excluded because I'm a bad person, like, and I can never be good. And we haven't created the right, and I mean, it's their job to create those tools. But I think that's an extreme version. But like that exists, I think, a lot of men left the Democratic Party this past election because they did feel emasculated by the Democratic Party, and trying to understand what that meant was really interesting, because I don't know if the right question is how do you avoid it. I think the right, like, for going back to your initial question of like, if you're dating, how do you avoid that masking? I think there's a general insecurity among men because we haven't created new definitions and narratives of what masculinity looks like. And so like the most traditional form of like masculinity historically that we know here in America is like a white supremacist, if you're looking at identity politics. So it's like we need new versions of masculinity, and we can't. I really went into this being like, maybe like I can fix them, like maybe I can teach them. But actually they have to be incentivized to start like a self-growth process. And so I unfortunately, like I don't have an answer, because I think what I found is like we can't be the ones that fix them. And I think this is like a bigger problem, like culturally.
I think it's also speaking to like the self-advocacy, like what you said, it's not our job to fix that sort of culture, to learn more and unpack and become more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
I have a book coming out in a couple of weeks.
Congrats.
Thanks. And in the book, I actually try to promote this other version of masculinity called wholesome masculinity. And it's something that kind of I've been talking about for a few years, and now it's solidified in the book. But it was like, to me, a few examples of that is like, fictionally, Ted Lasso. right? Where you see a person, I don't know if you ever watched Ted Lasso. It's
Man,
a really great
love
show.
Ted Lasso.
But what you see with Ted Lasso is that he, in the beginning, he's like kind of hesitant about therapy. He has some trauma. You know, his father committed suicide when he was a teenager, and now he's kind of like dealing with that while trying to help his players be the best version of themselves. That's his words. And that's a fictional, but then I do use like real life examples of what I'm detecting as wholesome masculinity. Stanley Tucci, Pedro Pascal, Dev Patel, Tom Holland. To me, like these are versions of wholesome masculinity. Doug Emhoff,
Totally.
Tim Walz. And
I also would add that it's really important, I think, for women for the liberal women that you were asking about, like we have to take a step back and look in the mirror and think about like, how are we judging men? And like, what about us is rejecting things that we don't like? Like there's a lot of like the version of feminism that hates men as a collective, like that I would say is like part of the problem too. And so I think, well, I just want to add like, look, yes, it's important to identify wholesome masculinity, but like what internalized misogyny do we have that is like learned from us competing with men like in work spaces or whatever and taking on some of those like toxic masculine traits. Like I think hating men is like a version of experiencing men who hate women, for example. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know
like,
what you mean.
So I think there's also like, and I think my question to you, my follow-up question, or in my mind, I'm wondering, okay, if I wanted a Ted Lasso, am I the person that would attract that person? So like, what about me might be something that I need to work on?
Right. I love that. That's
like,
a great
what is
question.
wholesome femininity? And also like, if you're looking, like to me, I realized the relation, I mean, I had to self-reflect a lot because they knew exactly what they were looking for. And I didn't know what I was looking for in dating. Obviously it wasn't a neo-Nazi, but like I went into dating very open-minded my whole life. And I'm like a very go with the flow person.
Yeah.
Which I've learned is like not great. Like you should know what your emotional needs are.
If you asked me what you should be looking for, I would like the go with the flow. I'm hyper intentional.
Well, yeah, I've learned that going with the flow is like wrong. Like don't do that.
Yeah.
And but I've learned that because I've had to like, as they tell me what they're looking for in the homeschooling and whatever, I'm in my mind answering, not that they ever asked me what I was looking for, but I would answer my own. I would tell myself, what am I looking for? And I think I've learned, and also I was really thinking about like submissive and dominant. Like that was like so jarring to me every time I had to think about like, oh, you want someone who's going to be like a second-class citizen to you in your own home. So,
but it's also kind of sexual too. I mean, I feel
it's
like
totally,
that's what I'm hearing.
It's totally sexual oppression because they were very uncomfortable with sex actually as like even a concept. Like it was hard for them to be like comfortable. They were uncomfortable in their bodies. That was their body. Their main body language was very uncomfortable in their bodies. Like I'm comfortable in my body and I felt, and you know, as an interviewer, when you're interviewing people, you have to make people feel comfortable, and I had to work on that. But so
much of what you're saying, like, okay, here's what I'm understanding, and it's okay if whoever's listening or watching this does not have the same perception. These specific men who feel like they're victims, and they might not say that, but are kind of victimizing themselves into these subgroups that are very misogynistic. And
they're such victims that they will say the Democratic Party is victimizing them. Right. But really they feel like victims, yes.
In that subset, right? And then you're also telling us, well, they were really uncomfortable in their skin.
Very.
And in my mind,
so uncomfortable in their bodies. It was so
and in my mind, hearing this, it's like, okay, well, how do we feel attractive? Like, what are the things that we know as social cues that are attractive? And of course, as women, we have been raised in this idea of like, the media that we consume and the environments that we've been put in as children until we became adults of like what is considered the ideal body type, even if it's bought, right? Not necessarily genetic lottery. So you have all these things. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, if a man feels insecure in his body, in my mind, again, this is just my perception, the only system that he has to blame is the patriarchy, because it's the patriarchy that has created the ideal standard of a woman, the ideal standard of a man.
Yeah.
Whereas like for women, I've always felt like the first thing that women look for in a man is, are you a creep? And how safe am I?
Well, also, if you think about like the patriarchy, and I think it is important, like, I think it depends. What do you even think the patriarchy is? For example, like someone might be listening to that and they might be like, well, I don't know what that means. And I will add, if your role as the man is to always be the leader and to always be so dominant in these like very rigid ways, how insane is it to put the responsibility of a woman's sexuality on a man? Like that's, I remember when I was working at I worked at Teen Vogue for a long time, and I worked on a lot of the sex education content with sex educators and human sexuality experts. And I learned that the majority of young men who have sex for the first time in high school did not want to have sex. So it's the social pressure. We think it's just girls who are pressured to have sex for the first time, but it's everybody. And so so if you think about, that pressure of like, you're a man, your job to be masculine is to have sex. And now also, because you're supposed to be dominant, you're supposed to somehow magically know how to like introduce sexuality to a woman or a girl, whatever, however you want to say that. Like that is, if you think about it, that is such an insane and unrealistic expectation. Because what do you know about like the female body? Like what, you know what I mean? Like you don't know anything. So how are you actually supposed to be confident about those experiences when you're never taught what that is, but you're expected to be dominant and masculine? So now you're just presenting like that, and you're having to manipulate women to think that you're that guy, because deep down you're not that guy, because that guy doesn't exist, because you can't magically just like be that person. That doesn't exist. Just like to just be so submissive and to let someone else introduce you to your own sexuality, that doesn't make sense either, because you should know your own body. You should be able to say and advocate for what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And that's really what I was thinking about when I was registering how uncomfortable they were in their bodies, because I was aware, I'm in a dating setting. Could I ever hook up with this guy?
Could you?
No.
Let me ask you one last question.
Yes.
In this whole investigation, minus the neo-Nazi meeting,
Yeah.
were there any moments on the dates where you felt unsafe or uneasy?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. There were many unsafe feeling moments. One of them I wrote about, but many of them I didn't. I mean, one guy was some of them were not emotionally, they couldn't manage their emotions. So the second you brought up like politics, they would like pretty much lose their shit. So like one guy would start like, he had like two personalities basically. Like he was like 6'4". He's like this massive dude. And he'd be like really soft spoken and like pretty shy, and I thought it was so cute for like someone so so huge to be this like gentle giant. Just like painting the picture of this character. Like I was just thinking to myself, like, this is so cute, like a shy, huge man.
Yeah.
And then, I'm there to ask about politics. And so I start asking like, because I think it was like the date was timed around the first debate. It was like Biden and Trump.
Right.
So I tried to bring that up. And the second I did that, his whole body language changed. His leg starts shaking.
Stop it.
His hands grabbed the table.
What?
To like basically like the edges of the table. And I could tell that he was physically trying to like stay calm. You know what I mean? And he also didn't, because he like raised his voice, and like the people at the tables next to us were like looking at us. And so that's an example of when I had to de-escalate someone he was like starting to like yell. Like he was raising his voice to the point of like everyone around could hear everything he was saying. He reminded me actually of when he reminded me of when I was like sitting with like a war vet who had PTSD from Iraq, who was having like a trauma flashback. That is how unmanaged this guy I was sitting with, like his emotions were so unmanaged. And I'm not comparing. I have so much respect for people who have sacrificed their lives for.
PTSD is PTSD though.
Yes. And so, and that's kind of what initially made me think about like the trauma connection, because I was like, why is this guy like this? Why is politics the trigger? And it was really the question that made him initially like this was, I was asking him like, he was telling me that he made a lot of lists in the pandemic about like his favorite desserts in the city.
Oh,
And he would like go and eat alone. I know.
it's like a sweet start.
I know. And I thought to myself, this is so cute. And then I was like, what other lists do you make? Innocent question. And the next thing he said was that he makes lists about lies liberal white women tell about Donald Trump. And I was like, this escalated quickly. So then I was like what? And I'm working. Like, he's on a date, but I want to know what's on that list. Mm-hmm. So I'm like what?
What have I ever said about Donald Trump that's been a lie?
Yeah, like
that I don't have video evidence of him doing it on camera.
So I was like what? Like, and he's like, liberal white women, and he starts like going on this tirade, and I'm sitting there like, that's me, and I'm like, well, why? And then I was like, why are white women like? I mean, they're like examples from like mainstream media headlines where something he said, like there are some moments where we take Donald Trump out of context when we don't need to, and like he does sometimes not mean what we are saying that he means. I don't think President Trump needs help looking bad, but like there are times where the media really does do that. Like they'll take something that he's saying and they turn it into this like whole thing that it's like really not.
But it's interesting that the media is now morphed into liberal white women.
I mean, I'm part of it, so I can't say it's not that. Like, but that's how they identify it. And I can't argue because I am a liberal white woman in mainstream media, so I can't be like, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, I am the problem they speak of, but like, what are we doing wrong?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's that list when he started talking about liberal white women and lies. And so he's reacting to the perceived witch hunt of men that we've decided are bad no matter what they say or do. That's what's the trigger. The trigger is President Trump is bad no matter what. So even if he says or does something like neutral or like empathetic, because there are moments that we just don't see where he just like is being a normal grandpa. We don't consume that content and we don't prioritize it. It's out there. Huh. That's what they are exposed to. They see a more humanized version. And so which I didn't even know until I started talking to people on the conservative dating app, because I was asking, what do you read? And so it was the fact that Donald Trump, point blank, bad guy based on progressive ideals. That means no matter what he says, he's bad. And these guys identify with that feeling. They feel that they are bad no matter what they say or do, they will be bad forever. And they are triggered by that, like, we've rejected them forever. That's the deep insecurity.
An attack on Trump kind of feels like an attack on
personal attack.
Them.
Wow. So now I want to just kind of go reflect to the beginning of this episode, and how this interview came about. Everything you've just shared today is now making more sense because I posted the video from the clip from that episode where we were just talking about how, like, for instance, this woman was sharing in a video that we shared.
Yes.
So we shared a video in a video where a woman said that when her boyfriend started consuming red pill content, their relationship dynamic completely changed.
Yes.
And the rest of the video is like pretty innocuous. It's kind of like, what's wrong? And then, my co-host said like, well, what's wrong with the white men? And I was like, I don't think it's just white men. I think there's anyway, the attacks that just started flying in by the thousands.
Yeah.
And I was like, where is this coming? Like, what are we saying that's
What's the trigger?
Yeah.
Like, what's triggering
what
them?
just happened? And I could tell that it was because I said red pill, as if I can't look up what that is or look up the content that they see. I'm like, I've seen what you see. And what was interesting was how many people they didn't attack my husband. They just assumed I was single
Huh.
and in line for an abortion. Meanwhile, I'm married, 2 kids in. Like, it wasn't like,
Yeah.
like I was like, okay, like no one knew that I had a husband. It's just like, they just assumed I was a single woman.
Yeah.
And I was like, so is my value diminished because I don't belong to a man?
I think it's like the thing of like, they don't even know who they hate.
Well, they hate themselves. Any hatred
Yeah.
of another person is you projecting self-hatred. Like, it's whatever.
The accusation's the confession.
Yeah. Yes. It never, nothing anyone, like, even if you're saying something good about another person, it's something you're recognizing in another person is you recognize that in yourself and you're just projecting it out. But yeah, I mean.
Vera, how are you feeling now?
Yeah, there's a lot to go through.
I
Are you okay?
feel like we
thanks
just
for
had a
asking.
trauma bonding experience here.
You know, I am extremely, I feel very privileged and grateful that I was able to learn so much. And I've gotten the question, like, would you do it all again? And like, despite some of the more unsafe experiences, yes, I would do it all again. Because I actually think it's so important to expose yourself to people you disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what we're asking people like that to do. Like, we're
Yeah.
asking them to talk to people that they think they hate. So I feel like I was doing that in my own, like I was doing it first, basically. That's not really, I didn't like intentionally
wasn't the
do
purpose.
that.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
that's not what I was intentionally doing. So I feel, so I definitely feel like grateful for the experience. I feel like I learned a lot that I wouldn't have been able to learn from just like reading their social media. Like I'm also right now, I just feel excited to be like actually single and to not have to go on dates that are secretly like interviews. Like I'm excited to actually date. Like I think that
Wow.
I reflected on all of my relationships and I just reflected on dating and what a relationship means to me the entire time that I was doing this. It's kind of an extreme environment to be doing that in, but I definitely learned like throughout the experience that I am looking for, or I want a partner who takes turns leading. Because I really
Equitable.
I really thought about that dominant, submissive, like masculine, feminine energy dynamic that these guys were talking about. And I felt like sometimes I am feminine in the ways that they idealize, and then sometimes I'm not. And I think that men, like, there needs to be more of like a
wider range that's
Yeah.
acknowledged. Yeah.
and I think everyone can be a leader in a relationship, and it's not always, because I had moments of like fully trying to empathize with them, to like really try to understand them. Like it was my job to understand them, so I empathized with them as much as I possibly could, which I wouldn't do if I wasn't working. Like if I met a guy like that on the street, I would not take the time to like fully empathize with them and given their beliefs about other people. And so what I learned from that is like, oh, I don't expect a man to do all of these things that these guys think a man is responsible for. Because, you know, the restaurant owner, for example, he is like super stressed about money. And like he was talking about, you know, he wants a homestead and a stay-at-home wife. And I'm like, can you afford that? Like I asked that question, like, can you afford that?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm working on it. I'm working really hard on it. And he like really like explained his like 5 to 10 year financial plan. And he was really stressed. And I never actually had that kind of conversation with a man. Like I never really talked about money and financial planning in terms of like family planning on a first date.
Right.
So like that point, I was like, okay, like we should be redefining like what is a family unit and what is everyone's job. Like sometimes it's okay, like it's okay for women to be leading financially. It's okay to take turns. Like, so that is where I'm at now is I feel like I'm excited to date, and I'm excited to know even what I'm looking for. And I also just think, I hope that by sharing some of these, I also don't think anyone should do what I did. Like, I definitely...
It doesn't seem safe.
No, it's not. It's not safe. And I definitely was talking to experts about how to create a safe process. This was like this was a professional journalistic endeavor. And I had like Navy SEALs explaining to me how to have like a safety protocol. So it was like a professional, it was very, the process was like there. I wasn't like...
There was a lot of things behind it.
Yes, there was a lot of energy went into making sure I was safe on my end. So I don't recommend doing this experiment. I kind of did it so that no one else would ever have to.
All right. So listeners, don't try this at home.
Yeah,
But
don't ever.
It's
try it.
nice
Vera,
that you came
it
out
was-
with
it
like
was
a hopeful... Oh, sorry.
No, please.
Oh, I just wanted to say that it's like, after hearing all that you're still hopeful about dating.
I feel so hopeful because I think it's just like a miscommunication that's like emotional. Like, we need more emotional literacy.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
think even liberal people know what they're looking for. You have
No.
flirting homework.
Yeah.
We're all learning how to connect.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't
You guys are going to get my book, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love any homework that has to do with flirting, dating.
Well, my book is like a lot of storytelling. So it's not just a dating book, it's a prescriptive memoir. So, how did I become a matchmaker, and who are my clients, and here's what I've learned, and here's all of this homework, because there is a chapter where it's like, okay, I need you to write in the book now. And so for all of my Audible purchasers, why don't you purchase the hard copy too?
Yeah.
And but it's so far though, I've had the people that have read it, the advanced copies, I'm just getting like positive like emails from them. They're like, I just did the homework, and I'm like,
Oh, that's great.
That's amazing.
so I can't wait for you to read it.
I have an answer to your earlier question about what to ask or what to look for.
Okay.
To figure out if you're dating a guy who's just like masking their emotional illiteracy
Yeah.
is how I'll describe it. I found that when I talked about how important romance was to me, like I love romance, and I, as a single person, just in my own life, no one else involved, I live my life like almost like romancing myself. Like
Whimsically.
I'm on a date with myself all the time.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
these men were uncomfortable or totally clueless with the concept of romance, which to me is related to emotional intimacy. And so I would say I would be forward enough to ask, like, what do you like to do to be romantic? Or like, what does romance mean to you?
Wow.
Because I asked point blank I asked this guy about like romance, and I was like, don't you believe that men deserve romance? And he really like was taken aback by that question, and he was like, I don't know anything about that. Like I need to figure out how to support a family. So it's like they don't even believe that they deserve romance. And I mean, with some of these beliefs, like maybe wait.
It's
to
really
date,
hard
but-
to accept love when you're unwilling to be emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah, it's hard to accept love when you like hate yourself as much as
Yeah.
these guys do. But yeah, I would say that asking about romance, that's like an emotionally intimate question.
Yeah, that's a great
and
question.
If someone isn't even comfortable enough to like in sex ed, you learn, like for young people, they say if you can't talk about sex with someone,
shouldn't
you
have
can't
sex
have
with
sex with them.
Yeah.
Don't have sex with them. And that might mean if you are uncomfortable talking about sex, you're not ready to have sex,
Right.
even as an adult. And I think with romance and like love and intimacy, if you can't answer that question, like what is romantic to you, or how important is romance? What does romance look like to you? If you can't answer that comfortably, you're not ready. You have to go figure that out.
I love that. What a way to end this episode. It's really hopeful, but it's also like homework.
Yeah.
Vera, I'm going to include the link to your original article in the show notes. But if people wanted to follow you, read more of your work, where can they find you?
So you can find me, just my name, Vera Papisova. On Instagram, I'm like the most active. There's a documentary coming out next month in April.
This month.
Oh yes, this month in April. Oh my God. I can't believe it's already April. But so this month there's a documentary coming out about modern extremism in America. I will be posting about that soon. And then the rest, like, the article that I wrote is just a small part of the investigation. So I'll be kind of breadcrumbing more and more pieces. And I'm going to be talking a lot on TikTok as well about just like what I've learned, because I've been collecting questions the last like month from people who have had the time to kind of read and digest.
Right.
So follow me on Vera Papisova anywhere and everywhere.
I hope they do. Jesse, we've got your Instagram on the show notes too.
Yeah, I'm like processing
Our brains are
whole
blown.
yes, yeah.
Like, I don't think
But like
either
in
of
a
us
good-
talk
like
a lot.
in a
in a,
good
no,
way.
in
That's
a good
Are
way.
you kidding?
Like, did it make sense?
I wish
Yes.
this was like a 4-parter now. I'm like,
I have a lot of conservative men in my family, and I'm like, not like as far as like, what you were describing and stuff, but it definitely like really is just making me think about a lot of things and kind of having a new perspective.
well, that's it. We could just keep talking forever, but I got to wrap this up. So that was it for this week's show. I can't wait to see this documentary that Vera was just mentioning. If it comes out, we'll try to include a show note on that too.
Sure.
So that way people can check it out. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you watch this on YouTube, show us in the comments what you thought. Well, what exactly did Vera say that maybe blew your mind or maybe you expected? I really want to hear from you. If you listen to this on audio, come on YouTube too and join the conversation. We'd love to learn. As always, be lovable, but more importantly, be likable. See you next week.